back tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. All right, airtime than I do. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. Okay, I don't know if you heard that conversation with Matt, but I was on with Ottawa Public Health this morning on CTV Morning Live, and we were talking about the fact now that somehow the rules have changed to getting testing. There are some like backlogs of up to 4 hours at Brewer, for example, and the whole thing here is that people who shouldn't be getting tested are. And I said, well, wait a minute. I went because I thought anyone could for the right reasons. My reason, Dr. Ray, was this. My sister has Crohn's. Her friend has diabetes. The two of them were joining us at the cottage this weekend, or this past 2 weeks. And I wanted to make sure that we who were coming all got tested, which we all did. But apparently, I shouldn't have.
That's interesting to me. I don't know what the rules are, to be honest. I'm as confused as anybody else.
Good, thank you.
There's a lot of conflicting information. Yeah. And it strikes me that your reasons are rational to me. It's about protecting certain individuals. It's not like a random, I'm curious about my status situation. Mm-hmm. It's actually a reason for your testing.
Yeah, preventing someone getting sick potentially and going and taking up a hospital bed.
That's right. Right. And, for most people, if you're curious about your status and you suspect you've been infected, just quarantine for 2 weeks. That's what your doctor will tell you to do anyway.
Yeah.
So the testing doesn't make that much of a difference. But for you, it actually will influence an action that you will take, a decision that you will make in your life. So to me, it makes sense that you get tested. Yeah, but the backlog is concerning. And I've often said that testing is one of the most important tools we have to control this epidemic. And rapid testing is crucial to making that tool effective. So I don't know what to say except we got to fix the problem.
Well, define rapid. It took me, I think, 36 hours I got the results.
That's not bad.
Yeah.
I'd like it under 24 hours, but 36 is better than I expected.
Well, I gave myself 48 because that's what they told me the maximum was before we actually left for the cottage. So I thought I'm covered. And we were. And everybody was negative. I thought it was a good investment in my time, more importantly, in the use of a test. But apparently not.
I'll investigate this. I'm a little confused.
Yeah.
We'll see. I mean, it brings up the larger conversation about where are the rapid tests. We keep hearing about the rapid testing coming down the pipeline technologically.
Yeah.
Saliva testing is a new hot thing. And I hope that Health Canada can okay one of the many saliva tests that are on the market. That will be a bit of a game changer.
Are they reliable?
And until then, I don't know how reliable they are.
Yeah.
I haven't seen the specs, but I know that several countries like Israel are experimenting with them, and that has to be the way we go until a vaccine arrives. Rapid on-site testing.
Well, it would imagine what that mean for the airline industry.
I'm thinking about schools.
That too, absolutely.
You're more of a luxurious guy than me.
No, I think you're just a doctor and I'm just a radio host. And I'm just thinking, though, because there are a lot of people who were saying, I'm never going to fly again until there's a vaccine. I'm thinking, well, wait a minute. What if there's a test where you check in an hour early?
That's right. But then the question is, what happens if you test positive?
You don't get on the flight.
Right, but do we shut down the wing?
Don't get on the plane until you have the results.
Well, that's true too. But are you on the airport? Are you at the airport already? I'm not sure.
Yeah,
it's a good idea.
True.
So
true.
Some aspect of that has to be put in place.
And what about schools? How would you test it?
Well, at schools it would be regular testing every day for everybody involved. If there's same day saliva testing, then you test before you leave the house.
Okay.
Yeah, and have a protocol in place. If anyone tests positive, then your cohort gets quarantined for several days while we investigate.
Huh? How do you feel? I interviewed the head of the OMA, Ontario Medical Association, Dr. Hill, this morning. She said she would not send her high school kids to high school because she doesn't think there's a social issue there that would be lacking, just to be preventative. But she would send her elementary kids to school.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way, and the reason is the risk for high school students to stay away is lesser. Their social development trajectory is less impinged if they stay home, and you don't need to have oversight over them. For younger kids, of course, you go to work, you got to send your kids somewhere, so send them to school. Now, I would prefer it if the schools had better infrastructure in place to protect the children, and that includes smaller class sizes, better teacher-student ratios, investing in masks and face shields for everyone involved, installing plexiglass barriers, all the stuff we've been calling for that for some reason the province is not willing to fund. But that being said, our incident rate in the community is low enough that I feel pretty good about sending a kid to school right now. That could change overnight, though. Yeah, well, we're getting to the numbers. We had a bit of a break, right? The lowest number of new cases in the capital since the 15th of July. 4 new cases reported yesterday. And there was a 16-day streak of double-digit increases. What does that tell you? Well, it's it's going in the right direction. However, this is the first day back from a long weekend, and there's going to be a backlog of tests to be processed.
Yeah.
Some people will not have gone in to be tested because of the long weekend. So I always take the numbers at the beginning of the week with a little hesitation. So
makes sense.
Ask me on Thursday.
Okay, so this may be a blip, and it may be back to double digits before we know it.
Let's hope not, but it might be.
But at the same time, moving into stage 3, we knew there was going to be an increase. Isn't this just all in the expectation?
Yes and no. There's going to be an increase, but no one really projected what that increase would look like. And really, we hoped that the trajectory would be either flat or downward after a brief blip. So the last few days, the trajectory has been, kind of flattish. There was a couple of days there when it looked like it was climbing again, and I was a little scared because the slope of that climb was similar to the slope that we saw earlier in the pandemic during the explosive growth phase.
Yeah.
It looks like we have things better under control. But again, you can't take our foot off that brake, people need to be reminded all the time, do not gather in large numbers. It's people who seem to forget.
How important is the Australian example? Just for people who don't know, in Melbourne, they've gone into a stage 4 lockdown. Bottom line, only one person for each household can go grocery shopping. They had, I think, 621 cases in that state, Victoria, in one day. I mean, is that possibly in our future if we don't smarten up? Oh, really?
It is a cautionary tale for us, and here are some reasons for it. One is that they're experiencing their fall and winter right now, and that's our near future. So fall and winter, everyone goes back inside.
Right.
This is when the disease loves to grow. Second is they didn't really enforce their quarantine for travelers as well as we'd hoped. They had a private sector process for doing so that was not as diligent as the public sector might have been, and so people were stepping outside their homes when they should have been quarantined. So that kind of diligence and vigilance was lacking. So the lesson for us is expect new numbers in the fall, but also we got to clamp down hard on those public health measures that we do put into place. So there's not a lot of room for error here.
So let's get back to the numbers. So those 16 days streak of double-digit increases. Here we are on the day after a holiday weekend, a Tuesday. There are just 12 people still in hospital, 2 of them in the ICU here in the capital. Those are manageable numbers, aren't they?
They are absolutely. So I'm an optimist, as always, and I see this as a good thing. I mean, it's not good for the people in the hospital, obviously, but it's good in the sense that we are not overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And we have a handle on this. And if we keep on doing everything right, we should be able to weather the storm.
Cruise ships, they're back out, and we're seeing another outbreak.
Yeah, so I'm that guy who owns stock in cruise lines.
Are you selling or buying more?
Well, they're worth nothing now, so I may have to buy more. In a couple of years, maybe the worth will be again.
Buy low, sell high, right?
So cruise lines are an obvious breeding ground for this sort of thing, and it astonishes me that people are still taking cruises.
I know.
I guess they're under the impression that public health measures were strongly in place.
Right. They figured it's never been safer to cruise because all those measures are in place.
Yeah, except that this disease does not tolerate a little bit of deviation from the norm, by which I mean if something is off kilter, if someone misses a cleaning schedule, if someone decides to step outside when they shouldn't have, that sort of thing, then it can explode. A cruise ship is like a prison with better food. And as a result, the people are self-contained. You're trapped. You're exposed to the same kinds of people every single day. It's an ideal scenario for an explosive infectious disease.
What about Hawaii? Did you hear today they're reopening come September in Canada? Canadians are allowed to visit as long as you have test results negative in the previous 72 hours when you land.
That's interesting. Now, what happens when Canadians come back? What are our rules for returning travelers from the
14
USA?
days. 14 days. No?
I guess we need that. I mean, Hawaii is one of the better controlled states of the U.S., obviously, for obvious reasons. They're an island.
Yeah.
You got to do something to maintain your tourist economy. And if that's what they have to do, that's what they have to do. I really hope, though, that they're taking all the precautions. So what we see in some other vacation hotspots around the world is travelers are seeding new events. And all it takes is one traveler not to respect the quarantine.
Right.
And suddenly you have an outbreak.
Well, and there's a risk here because 72 hours does not a symptom make in many cases, right?
It takes about 2 weeks to get symptoms manifest, and in some cases months. Right, so you're going to get the majority of people, but all it takes is 1 or 2. So that's the danger here. They really are rolling the dice.
There's a new study that was released in The Lancet. I want your reaction. It says the reopening of schools and relaxing lockdown measures could trigger a second wave, twice as bad as the first. Study notes there's still a lot we don't know about how COVID-19 affects children. First question, aren't we doing exactly what it says here, reopening schools and relaxing lockdown measures with stage 3?
Yes.
Hey.
However, with the appropriate public health investments, the risk can be kept low. The question is, are we making those right investments? That's another conversation.
Okay. And
the second half, the transmission among children is not well known. Yeah, 100%. And the data, in my opinion, the studies that the provincial government is using to drive this decision making, I think it's biased, and the caveats are not being well explored. For example, so many of the studies say that children are not great transmitters of the disease. Maybe, but most of those studies do not consider the asymptomatic nature of most children. So you cannot measure which children were in fact index cases for outbreaks because you never tested the asymptomatic ones.
So what does that mean in layman's terms here? We're testing a population to make the numbers look better than they are?
No, it means that most of the studies are done on people with symptoms. That's all it means. All right? And so policy is being driven by those studies, and no one's really looked at thoroughly the extent to which asymptomatic children can spread the disease. Yeah. And maybe they don't, but they might. I think they do. And so until we can control for that, then, we're rolling the dice. However, the public health investments can be made. And I mentioned them earlier. You make everyone wear masks and face shields. You limit the class sizes to less than 15, preferably less than 10. Okay. You put plexiglass barriers between desks. And you keep, most important thing is you keep the number of cases in the community as low as possible.
You may have the plexiglass barriers, but kids, they're not going to stay. The minute the bell rings, they're going to be back, with arms around each other.
Right. We can't let perfect be the enemy of good. We do the best we can and hope that for the most part, people follow them. It's like wearing a mask. Yeah. A mask isn't perfect, and you're not going to wear it perfectly. But if you do it most of the time, right, by most people, do we get what we need? So with kids, you don't need to not touch your face all the time, just most of the time. You don't need to be behind the plexiglass all the time, just most of the time. So these arguments that we can't do it perfectly, therefore we shouldn't try, are mystifying to me.
Final question. You're a dad, right?
Yes, I am.
How old are the kids?
3 months.
Oh, 3 months. Oh, brand new. Congratulations. In the pandemic?
Yeah, epidemiologist has pandemic baby. That's
wow. Right. You buried your lead. So let me ask you a question. If you had kids of a reasonable age where you're not have to feeding them, but they can feed themselves, would you go to a restaurant inside?
No.
Okay. I always ask that of doctors. And why not? Why not? It's supposed to be safe, Doc.
One, I'm one of those annoying vegans, so I prefer to eat at home where I can control my intake. Two, I don't see the need to expose my family to that risk. Now, I'm not criticizing those who do, and restaurants need to stay open, and people need jobs, etc. So I'm not, diminishing that possibility. For me personally, I don't need that risk for the amount of social pleasure that the experience gives me.
Right. It's a calculated risk with everything going forward, and that's one you're not willing to take, bottom line.
That's right.
Hey, another day we'll talk about veganism, pros and cons. How do you feel, Dr. Ray?
Oh, I am very happy to have that conversation.
Looking forward to it as always. Dr. Raywat Deonandan, epidemiologist, science communicator at the University of Ottawa. Thank you, sir. Until next time.
Bye-bye.
Coming up.